Today, I'm in the village of Abernethy, which sits in south-east Perthshire. Now, I'm quite excited to be here because I grew up in Abernethy. From the ages of 10 to about 18, this is where I called home. And I've still got some very good friends who stay in the village to this day. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of Abernethy. It's a very old place. It was an early Pictish religious site. It was here that Malcolm III, King of Scots, met William the Conqueror and signed the Treaty of Abernethy. It's got a round tower, which is very, very unusual in Scotland. Only Abernethy and Brechin have towers like this. Abernethy Round Tower would have been a lookout tower. It would have been connected to the religious site, and people would be on top of the tower all day long looking towards the River Tay, making sure that there was no Viking ships coming up the river and potentially attacking the religious houses. My story today has got a little bit of everything: lost gold, battles, and a supernatural element. And it took place on top of Castlelaw Hill, which stands just to the south-west of the village. At one time on top of the hill there was a Pictish fort. Now we're going to walk along the circular path, and I would thoroughly recommend anybody who stays in Perthshire to come to Abernethy and have a wee walk along the circular path up the top of Castlelaw Hill. The views from the top are magnificent. I'm really looking forward to showing you. As a boy, I spent hours on top of Castlelaw Hill, just watching the world go by down below. The cars on the road, the buses going through the village, or the trains going past. I also used to run the Abernethy Hill Race, which takes place in the summer. My uncle from Pennycook in Midlothian would come up to Abernethy and would run the race together. And despite him having about 20 years on me, I never once managed to beat him. So I've got a lot of happy memories of being here as a boy and racing with my Uncle Dennis, who I was very, very close to. So I'm looking forward to taking you to the summit and telling you this story, which isn't that well known. It's more of a local legend. The path to the foot of Castlelaw from the village is quite a gentle slope. As you're walking along in the summer, you'll pass these gorse bushes, which have got really nice yellow flowers, and in the summertime they smell wonderful. This path, if you're coming in the winter time, then I would recommend you bring some good footwear, as I've chosen a fantastic day. It's the middle of March. It's a wee bit frosty on the ground, clear skies, but it can be a bit muddy, so, dress sensibly. As you can see, this is quite a historic path, for Abernethy at one time was famous for witchcraft and witches. But that's a story for another day. I've not taken any footage of me actually walking up the steep slope of the hill, because I didn't think you'd want to see me puffing and panting and my big red face. But now I'm on the summit, I've had a wee refreshment, a tin of Iron Brew. Now, I'm not paid by Iron Brew to promote it. I just think it's fantastic that Scotland's the only country in the world where one of the big cola companies is not the top selling soft drink. It's Iron Brew, which is made in Glasgow. So if you're ever in Scotland for a holiday, you must try either a tin or a bottle of Iron Brew. The older recipe's the best. It was changed because there was new laws regarding sugar. This is a newer recipe, but it's still very nice and refreshing. So I would recommend you give it a try. It's quite interesting. There was a cairn on the top of the hill, and the stone on the top of the cairn was painted. Now these stones are put in various places around Scotland by nationalists, people who want Scotland to be an independent country, free from Westminster rule. And I'm going to keep my politics out of this. It's not a political YouTube channel, so I'm not going to tell you what I think about Scotland's independence. But it's a nice stone. It's got a unicorn painted on it. Unicorn's one of the emblems of Scotland. It's got the Psalter, the Scottish flag, and the word courage along the top. Now, It brought a smile to my face because I think it's a wonderful way to get your political point across, especially in this day and age. As you can see, this would be a wonderful place to have a fort. You can see for miles around. It'd almost be impossible for any invading army to creep up on you when you've got such a viewpoint. And I'd like to thank David McClyman for doing the drone footage for me. David and I filmed on separate occasions, so that's why you might notice a little bit variation in the weather between the drone footage and the film that I shot just a couple of days ago. From the summit here, to the west you can see the village of Bridge of Erne, and behind that the Western Highlands. As you span round from the loop in the river, you can see where the River Erne meets the River Tay. Behind that, the Carse of Gowrie, and behind that, the Grampian Mountains and the start of the Cairngorms. As you span east, you can get a glimpse of the city of Dundee. You can make out the tower blocks, and on a good day like today, you can see the railway bridge going across the Tay at Dundee. You can see for miles and miles in every direction from this viewpoint. A perfect place for a fort or a castle. The fort at Castlelaw was excavated between 1896 and 1898, and during these excavations they found that it had an inner and outer wall. In some places this wall was between 18 and 25 feet thick. Some of the marks you can see in the ground at the top of the hill here are excavation trenches dug by these archaeologists in the late 19th century.
Explore Castle Menzies after dark.
Is it really haunted?
Is it really haunted?
Book now to find out.
If you dare.
But for my story, I want to take you back to the 9th century. This area was under the control of the Picts, but they were under threat from invaders from the west, the Scots, who were originally from Ireland. The Scots gained a toehold in Argyll and then started to move east, threatening the Pictish kingdom. In 839, the Pictish king Driskin was preparing to leave his fort at Castlelaw to offer battle to an invading Scottish army. Before Driskin left, he picked up his son and heir, a baby boy, and kissed him tenderly on the forehead. He then placed the child in a cradle made of solid gold. He then embraced his queen before leaving with his men to offer battle to the Scots. Some days later, the queen heard that her husband's force had been defeated and that Driskin was dead. In the fort at the top of Castlelaw, the queen and the women and children were protected by a handful of Pictish warriors, who were mostly older men and young boys. They watched the valley far below and saw plumes of smoke. Bands of exhausted and frightened refugees made their way up the hill and piled into the castle. The Scots were approaching. The Scottish force surrounded the hill and, knowing that the castle was poorly defended, attacked. The castle quickly fell as the Scots rushed through the gates. They started to kill all the terrified Picts, every man, woman and child. The nursemaid who looked after Driskin's son, the Pictish prince, picked up her charge and ran to a loch at the top of Castlelaw. The Scots started to fire arrows at the women, but they all missed. She knew that if the Scots got hold of this young prince, they would butcher him. Knowing all was lost, she held the cradle aloft with child still inside, uttered a terrible curse, then threw herself, baby and all, into the freezing dark waters and disappeared forever. The Scots had heard all about this cradle and how it was supposed to have strange magical powers, so they tried to retrieve it from the loch. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a violent storm arose. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed across the sky. Terrified, the fearful Scots withdrew from the burning castle. It's said now an old hag protects the cradle. She is gaunt and wild-looking, and when she appears, she will shriek to any treasure hunters, "Forbear, forbear, or thus feel my power. The golden cradle can never be got, till a mortal, undaunted, at midnight murk hour, 9 times alone shall encircle this spot. When 9 green lines shall encircle me round, then shall the golden cradle be found." Another guardian from the underworld who protects this treasure is said to be a dwarf-like man, with brown haggard skin, long beard, shaggy hair. He's dressed in brown and has a comical hat on his head. He will stand in front of the seeker of the treasure and angrily command him to go, to leave. So far, all would-be Indiana Joneses have been defeated in their quest by these 2 guardians. Also, violent storms will rage overhead. Strange ghostly phantoms will rise from the water, or voices can be heard coming from nowhere. There's records of 3 of these treasure seekers and their fate when they went to look for this gold cradle. One of them was a sailor whose ship had docked at Leith. The man went to Abernethy to visit his father. He'd heard of this story, and in one night, as the midnight hour approached, he climbed the hill, intended to find the golden cradle. But he was never, ever seen again. Another man, called Jock Perthshire, made his way to the loch side. When he came down from the hill in the morning, he completely lost his mind and never recovered. A third man, Tam Pictish, he was left deaf and dumb and wasn't able to tell anyone what he'd seen or heard at the top of Castlelaw Hill. Now, as I've said, I used to spend a lot of time up the top of the hill as a young boy, but I do remember at dusk, just as night time approached, the place took a more sinister, forbidding atmosphere, and usually I would get up and leave. I couldn't get down the hill fast enough. So perhaps one of you listeners may fancy your chance of finding this golden cradle, which presumably still lies at the bottom of where this loch once was. It's strange that when I was a child there was still quite a bit of water here, but now it's just a tiny patch. The rest is very boggy marsh. I tried to walk out into the middle, but my foot went right down, so it is very, very wet. The ground's saturated. But I was surprised at the lack of water. Perhaps it just shows you what global warming has done in the last 40 years. But it's still a magical place. The view's still stunning. And it is where I want my ashes to be scattered when my time comes and I'm dead. If you've enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe. You might like to take one of our dark history tours, ghost tours, or paranormal investigations that are held in Perthshire, Glasgow and Stirling. If so, please visit our website, which is www.historyandhorrortours.com. Thank you.